auspices of the Germans. At night, in the camp, the Hungarians took care of us. And when I say they took care of us, I mean they took care of us. They would play soldiers with us, and for no reason at all, they would string us up by the arm, bound in the back. In 5 minutes, you fainted away. You couldn't bear the pain. It became so bad that we could not work, and the Germans almost had a war with the Hungarians because we were of no use to them. And to the Germans, there were 6,000 Jewish people among the 150,000. And all of the 6,000, or the vast majority of them, were well educated and trainable. And they needed those people to take positions that need training. I was assigned to a machine that, like we have here, the dirt mover machine that took out all the debris from the tunnel after the blasting, all the stones, the rubble, and would remove it from there to make room for the new crew to come in and to bore the holes and to dynamite the next part of the tunnel. I was in charge of that machine, and I had 10 others that were working with me. We spoke the language, and we came in contact. Not we, I spoke the language, because many of those prisoners were Hungarians who couldn't speak a word Serbian. But I, being a Yugoslavian myself and speaking the language had contact with the population and eventually with the partisans. And in that manner we could secure certain privileges, certain things from them. For example, in 1944, for Pesach, we baked matzahs under the nose of the Germans and the Hungarians. We bought a sack of wheat and an old coffee grinder, and one of us would constantly grind the wheat, and whatever we grounded during the break after we finished our work, we would go up to the smithy, and there we would put an iron plate over the coals and make the matzah fest and bake it right on there. We did not manage to have enough for whole Pesach, but we managed to have each one of us about 8 to 10 matzahs. And that was a treat for us to be able to observe the Passover even there. We also managed to have in that camp a kosher kitchen for about 50 to 60 people of us. We would trade the non-kosher products for other products, and we would have our kosher meals. For Pesach, instead of bread, we got potatoes and beans. Yes, beans were permissible under the circumstances that we were under. So we did manage to observe our faith to some degree.
How was your health affected during those times?
Well, thank God I was a healthy young man. I don't remember experiencing any health problems until I was in concentration camp in Germany itself, and we'll get to that later.
Yes. Also, were there accidents during this mining operation?
There were many accidents.
You saw them?
Many. No, not in my crew, but there were many other accidents. I can relate one experience that comes to my mind about a writer who was writing a diary on the thing that was happening, and he was cut. He discovered it. The next day he stopped working, and everybody had to assemble in the large area where there were gallows, and we had to witness the hanging of the person.
You mean he was hanged for keeping
He
the
was
diary?
hanged for keeping the diary, and we had to witness it. We were surrounded with machine guns, and if we cast our eyes down, we were beaten over the head and over the shoulder. We had to watch it. And this is one incident that I can relate to you, that I witnessed. Otherwise, there were the regular mistreatment, maltreatment of the Hungarian soldiers. The Germans were fair to us because they considered us to be what they called us nützliche Juden.
Nützlich.
Nützliche Juden, yes. And those are our Jews to whom we can use,
Yes.
and they are trainable.
Useful slave laborers.
That's useful slave labor. They went to such an extent that I received printed cards from my wife every month saying that they are well, not to worry, everything is okay, with her signature. I later found out that those cards kept coming even after she was taken to Auschwitz and killed. Kept sending, because they felt that they don't want to antagonize, and eventually the mistreatment of the Hungarians eased because of the pressure from the Germans on the Hungarians. We were in Boer till September 1944.
You did mention that you spoke Serbian to the Serbian slave laborers, and
Yes.
you were in touch with the partisans.
I was in touch with the partisans. Not only was I in touch with the partisans, I used my machinery to hide donating capsules, the detonating capsules, detonators. What they usually did when they bore 50 to 100 holes in the wall, they usually would put 2 sticks of dynamite in there, and they would put 2 capsules. Instead of putting 2 capsules, they put 1 capsule. And we managed every day to get a small box of capsules and to hide them in my machine. Now, the people that were the detonators, they were searched every day when they went out. But my group was not searched because we had nothing to do with ammunition or explosives. When they left, I could steal them out and give it to the partisans, and the partisans used those to blow up the products the copper and the machinery that they did during the day. So we did participate in sabotage, knowing very well the risks that we were taking.
Did the Todt organization overseers catch anybody involved in sabotage at your place of work?
Not that
you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of. It was a very well organized. As a matter of fact, we were so careful that very few people knew about it. Perhaps the liaison from the partisans, myself, and the one who had the explosives. I think the three of us were the only ones who knew.
So you remained working there until the middle of 1944?
Around September 1944, the partisans became too formidable to the Germans to handle, and they decided to evacuate. Also, they had mostly finished their work there. They did build the dams and the electric dams, and they moved the mountains, and they diverted the river, so that they felt that there was no need. And the Hungarians told us that we are going home. So we started on a march.
Was there any effort by the partisans to free any of the slave laborers?
We could have run away whenever we wanted. And very often I have asked myself why I didn't. The only reason is that I knew that my family is still home and that we can go home. The Hungarians played yet the normal game with us, that we are just workers and we are going to be going home, and that's why we kept marching. That was actually a death march that we were put on from Bor to Baja in Hungary. And on the road there were many dead people. Beginning the march, first of all, we didn't have any organized food, and we were not allowed to even get off the road to fetch food for ourselves. It was a very difficult march. I remember living on one raw ear of corn almost a week. Nothing else, and no water.
This march was conducted by Hungarians, not by the SS?
It was conducted by Germans, by Hungarians, and by the Croatian Ustashi.
Ustashi.
They were the ones who guarded us on the road. Now, up till Belgrade, we could manage yet. But when we got to Belgrade, before Belgrade, there is a place where there were lots of grapes growing. I'm trying to remember the name. It just doesn't come to my mind. Smederevo. In Smederevo, I got actually off the group and got in a vineyard and spoke with a Serb, and he gave me grapes. I had a very good meal. I was just afraid that I shouldn't get sick from and gave me bread, all kinds of things. And I found a school chum of mine who begged me to skip. And I refused because he said, you are not going to go home. All the Jews are being taken away. We did not want to believe them. We did not want to believe them. And then we got into Belgrade, and we were in Belgrade for Yom Kippur 1944. We were interned in the Saimiste. Those are the exhibition grounds in Belgrade. For 3 days, I fasted Yom Kippur, not 1 day, but 3 days. There was no food. The day after Yom Kippur, we got some food. And again, the Serbs, I have to put that on a record, to give thanks for something that they did. The Serbian population, when they saw us marching into Belgrade, they asked who we are, and we said Yevreyi, and they said Nashi Yevreyi, or Jews. The women ran home and brought loaves of bread and threw it into the crowd, pieces of ham and bacon and whatever food they had, they were throwing. And if one of the guards would take it away from us, the woman would jump out and tear it, literally tear it from their hands and throw it in the public, and would say, "Not for you, you pig." The Serbs had no fear of the occupation, especially not in Belgrade. They would not touch them, no matter how provocative they were. But they helped us, and I saw many of them with real tears running from their eyes when they saw us. I must put that in for the record, because not too many people know that not all the nations were anti-Semitic. There were nations that did help the Jews an awful lot.
So that was your experience in Belgrade?
That was my experience in Belgrade.
And then what happened?
Then the next day we went on a march, about 2 days after Yom Kippur. And on Hoshana Rabbah, evening before, we were in Chervenka. Chervenka, they put us up in a brick kiln. I don't know whether you know the European brick kilns. It's about a block wide, and it is built with gates, entrances to it, and it is stocked with wood and bricks. But this was an empty one, was not functioning, but that's where they put us up. And during the night, they would play games with us. They would start shooting at one entrance, and everybody ran to the other entrance, and they would start shooting at the other entrance. That night, close to 600 of us were shot to death. And the next day we had to keep on marching to Sombor. On the road from Chervenka to Sombor, there were dead people lying on the road, one next to the other. I saw people with their talis and tefillin being right next to them, and their brain shot out. It was a horrible, horrible, horrible march. I have very vivid memories from there. It was the first time during the war that I ate non-kosher, because if not, I would have dropped that right there. Still had a piece of the bacon that one of the women threw, and that's what sustained me to be able to continue. we had experience on that day where we were marching, and on the march, an SS-man who came from the front jumped off his motorbike and just started mowing with his automatic machine down. We all fell to the ground. There were people to my left, to my right, in front, lying dead. And thank God I got up unhurt. There were many people killed at that time. On another occasion, one of the officers lined us up because he gave his rucksack to one of the inmates and he lagged behind and he couldn't see him, and he said, until I get him here, he was shooting. Shooting stopped a few men just in front of me. Not the kind of experiences that we had with that until we arrived that day to Zombor, and next day or 2 days after we crossed the old Hungarian border, and we came to a place called Baja. Baja, we were billeted in the Jewish cemetery, and by that time, out of close to 3,000 Jews, about half were gone. And from there, they took us to the Austrian border, and we were embarked in railway carts, and we were taken to Flossenburg concentration camp. By the time we arrived to Flossenburg, there were only about 1,200 left. In Flossenburg, we stayed only a short while, because that was not a camp, that was a camp which distributed its inmates to different concentration camps. I came to Flossenburg on November the 9th, 1944, and were transferred to a concentration camp not far from Nuremberg, called Hersbruck. We came there December the 3rd. I have those dates. And that was a real destruction camp. That camp was set up to destroy people. Every day, we got scores and scores of dead from the work. I was working as a mechanic, because when they asked me what my profession is, I didn't want to tell them that I'm an intellectual. So I told them I'm a machine mechanic. And beside that, I was very mechanically and technologically inclined. So I got away with it. I worked at the railway.
What kind of work?
Fixing lorries, that's a thing, and whatever other things had to be fixed. In Hersbruck, most of the time I worked indoors. But other commanders told me what was going on there. They would take people of different heights, and they would give them lengths of rail, and they would make them carry it up a mountain. When they came up there, an assessment was standing there and just rolled the thing down. and make them go down and bring it up again. You can imagine that the tall ones didn't last long, because the short ones didn't bear their weight, so all the weight was on the tall ones. From that place, every day they brought in scores of dead people. And it was known that Hersbruck was a Vernichtungslager, a historic camp. I had very, very bad experiences there, and I had one good experience also, because there was one man in that workshop who would every day give his lunch. He had what do you call it? Lunch boxes, but it had little bowls in it, and he had 4 or 5 bowls, and he would give it to one of the inmates. Every day he would pick another inmate and to clean it, to wash it for him, and he would leave one of them full of food. He would also bring in potatoes, and we would throw the potatoes in the ashes of the oven to bake. So
Who was this man?
He was an officer of, also I think of the Tot organization. But he was a military man. But he did that. I don't know his name to this very day. But we knew about him. And that was one of the rare experiences.
July 25th, 1995, survivor Rabbi Jean Klein, Reel 3, which is being videotaped in the Rabbi's study. Rabbi, at the end of 1944, you were in Hirschbruck concentration camp. Can you continue talking about what happened there?
Yes, I was talking about that German officer who was giving us food while we were working in a workshop with him, hidden from his comrades by giving us the containers of his lunch containers to wash it out, and he would leave food there every day. He would pick a different person every day to have us to. So that there were good people even in the worst situation. I would like, if you don't mind, go back to one incident that happened to me in Flossenburg. While I was in Flossenburg at the end of November 1944, I was standing in line to receive my lunch, and one of the Blokovis, I know whether you know what that is, comes and sees that I am wearing like a scarf on my neck. It was very, very cold, and the schmattes that they gave us to wear on our feet instead of socks, I felt I will put it there so I shouldn't catch a cold. And he takes me out from the line, and he gets an officer there and says, "Here is the guy who is cutting up the blankets and who is using it." It was a piece of blanket. That's what I was given. I was beaten and